So follow us there on Facebook and YouTube, and also listen to 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Watch them on their Facebook page, 910 AM Superstation. All right, it's Sunday, June 25th, 2023, and we are live. Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. I'm Michael Imhotep. So this past week, I was on the Reva Martin show on KBLA 1580 AM out of Southern California, which is Tavis Smiley's radio station. And we discussed using Juneteenth as a tool to teach reparations. And I said we have to correct the history of Juneteenth and protect the history of Juneteenth. So we know this past Monday, June 19th, was Juneteenth, which commemorates June 19th, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger goes into Galveston, Texas, and delivers General Order Number 3, announcing to enslaved Africans in Galveston, but also throughout Texas, that they were freed because of an executive order from President Abraham Lincoln, which was the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, the Emancipation Proclamation did not legally free the enslaved Africans, and there's a lot of misinformation in the media. So I'm going to share the interview that was done with me on a Reva Martin show. Her producer Avi was sitting in for Reva, and also will deal with some misinformation that's in the media about Juneteenth. Okay, we'll correct some of this misinformation that is in the media about Juneteenth as well. And this is why it's important to understand this history, why it's important to read these original documents as well, like the Emancipation Proclamation, U.S. Constitution, etc. Okay, now, Friday, Fridays I'm on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And this past Friday, I got a text message from Roland's producer at 4:27 p.m., I think it was. And she said, Michael, we need you to guest host Roland's show today, because Roland was out of town. And I said, okay, no problem. I said, no problem. We can do this. So I ended up guest hosting the show. I was scheduled to be a guest on the show, ended up being the guest host of the show. So we talked about a number of different topics on Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Friday, June 23rd edition. One of the topics we discussed was the executive order that President Joe Biden was signing on Friday, dealing with expanding birth control access. Okay, expanding birth control access, making contraceptives easier, free contraceptives easier to access. And we discussed that topic with the panel. I'm gonna let you hear that segment of Roland Martin Unfiltered. And there was a article from, last Sunday we talked about this misinformation floating around on social media about Tyler Perry purchasing BET. And we dealt with this last week and said that's a false story. And the main news source, if you want to call them a news source, streamer.com, that circulated that story, they took down that article a day or two after they put the article up. Okay. And you had all these news outlets, Ebony Magazine and the Black Enterprise, all these, and no mainstream media outlets, wasn't NBC, ABC, CBS, Washington Post, New York Times, none of them quoted this misinformation, cited this misinformation. But the story by streamer.com was taken down. And as I said before, as I said last week, Tyler Perry did not post on his social media platforms that he purchased BET. Okay. And BET didn't say that they sold BET either. There's an article from the New York Post, and I'm not a big fan of the New York Post, but there's an article from the New York Post that talks about how Tyler Perry is apparently balking, or apparently complaining about the $3 billion price tag for BET. Okay. which is more evidence that he didn't buy BET. And it cites in this article, it cites the misinformation that's been floating around in some media platforms about him allegedly buying BET. So we'll discuss, we'll give you an update on that also. We'll discuss that as well. Okay. Paramount's BET sale in doubt as Tyler Perry balks at $3 billion price, sources say. And I would like to get more concrete information on this, but this is what we have right now. Okay, so we'll discuss that. And then there's another story that I wanted to get to. Representative Jasmine Crockett. I saw that, let's see, Thursday, what was it? Thursday, June 15th. I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered with Reese Colbert and Dr. Greg Carr from Howard University. And we discussed the story of Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, Democrat from Texas, shutting down crazy Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado, who and Lauren Boebert was just spewing nonsense in a House committee meeting. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to try to squeeze that article, that story in, and let you hear what happened. And then we're also going to discuss developments in Russia. Okay, and on Saturday, it looks like there was a coup attempt in Russia by the Wagner group, and the leader of the Wagner group. And so now it looks like that coup attempt has been aborted, and he is going to live in exile in Belarus. Okay. And that is Prigozhin, okay, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's the leader of the Wagner group, which is a group of mercenaries, hired mercenaries. Now, these are brutal mercenaries who commit all types of atrocities wherever they go, but also they have committed atrocities in Africa, including the Republic of Africa as well. Okay, so there was a story from NBC News, Central African Republic. There was a story from NBC News back from June 1st, 2023. I saw the story when it came out. Before the story came out, I had heard reports of the Wagner group operating in different African countries and committing atrocities and stealing the mineral wealth, etc. So we're going to talk about that as well. Central African Republic president says he called in the Russians because he was stuck. It was 2016, soon after his election, and rebels had overrun swaths of the resource-rich country, Central African Republic, which is among the world's poorest nations. And the Wagner group has committed all types of atrocities there as well. Okay, and there was also another article that we posted on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, dealing with the Wagner group being in Africa. This article was from The Conversation. I posted that article on Saturday. From theconversation.com, I think it is. We'll reference that also. But this one here from NBC News, Russian mercenaries exploit a war-torn African nation as they lead Putin's fight in Ukraine. So we'll give you an update on what's going on in these international affairs on today's episode of the African History Network Show. Now, on the African History Network Show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Then we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Sign up for our email newsletter there, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Also register for my new 12-week online course that just started up Saturday, June 24th. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And we'll give you more information about that on today's show. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes. 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF or Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. All right. You can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Stand by. How's everybody doing? Post your comments here. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart. Give us a like on this broadcast. Stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by. All right, everybody, back from break in 1 minute.
So we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell. They may have the areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. So we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this. Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. I want to remind you, be sure to register for the new 12-week online course that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. That I teach on Saturdays, I should say. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. TheAHNShow.com. When you scroll down the page, you'll see the information. Class number 1 was Saturday, June 24th. Class number 2 will be Saturday, June 1st. As soon as you register, you can watch class number 1. We have bonus content as well. There will also be 5 of my lectures that are in the video library that you can watch as well. Okay, so we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. And I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles. The class is on sale, $80, regularly $130. And the content is PG-13, so you can use this with your children also. So visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, and register for the class, and you can start watching the content now. All right. I want to go to this interview that was done with me on Areva Martin in real time, KBLA 1580 AM out of Southern California. You know, Areva Martin was on Roland Martin Unfiltered last week, week before last when I was on. And she was talking about Latinos and African Americans in Palm Springs in the community in California who was suing for $2.3 billion for having their homes destroyed, having their homes demolished, etc. Well, I was on her show talking about using Juneteenth as a tool to not just educate on the history of this country and the history of slavery, but also to fight for reparations and educate people on the need for reparative justice. Okay, so we discussed this on June 22nd, which was Thursday, June 22nd. Avi Bernard was sitting in for Areva Martin. So let's go to this clip, Doug.
Houston, LA. Welcome forward. It's Areva Martin Real Time. I'm Avi Bernard in for Areva Martin today, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Michael Imhotep, who is a researcher, historian, radio show host, and he is the founder of the African History Network. His website is theAfricanHistoriesNetwork.com, just filled with knowledge and always teaching about our history. Really appreciate you being here, Michael. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me, Avi. It's good to be here back on Areva Martin in real time.
Always great to have you. So, Juneteenth was this week, just a few days ago, and I want to start by asking you, what were your thoughts on the celebrations that you were part of or that you saw? What do you think of the caliber of the Juneteenth celebrations this year, as far as kind of staying focused on the purpose of Juneteenth?
Well, first of all, I live in Detroit, and I monitored celebrations in Detroit. There were more celebrations in Detroit, in the Metro Detroit area, than I've ever seen before. I spoke at 3 or 4 different celebrations in Detroit, in the Metro Detroit area. I read numerous articles about Juneteenth this year, 2023. I also watched a lot of news media coverage, especially cable news, on Juneteenth. So the fact that African Americans are coming together on this federal holiday, celebrating Juneteenth, learning more about the history is extremely important. But as I always say, we have to correct the history of Juneteenth, protect the history of Juneteenth. Number one, there's a lot of misinformation floating around about Juneteenth and its history, about the Emancipation Proclamation, things of this nature. And a lot of it is coming from mainstream media. It could be coming from MSNBC, CNN. For instance, I saw the Rachel Maddow show, and not to pick on Rachel, but she said that the enslaved Africans in Galveston, Texas, learned 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation that they were free. And she only read part of General Order Number 3, which was issued June 19th, 1865, by Major General Gordon Granger. And a lot of the news media falls into this trap. They stop at the part where it says all slaves are free. They skip over the part where Major General Gordon Granger went on to say that those enslaved Africans should stay on the plantations and seek wages from their former slave owners, and they should not roam the roads, they should not run behind Union lines, things of this nature. And one of the biggest mistakes that happens, and I see this over and over again, whether it's the Washington Post, New York Times, whether it's Amber Ruffin show, we still operate under this fifth grade mentality that the Emancipation Proclamation that President Abraham Lincoln issued January 1st, 1863, freed the slaves. It did not. What legally frees enslaved Africans, what ends chattel slavery, is when the 13th Amendment is ratified December 6, 1865 by Georgia, and Georgia became the 27th state to ratify the 13th Amendment. So the way the narrative goes, they say, well, these enslaved Africans found out basically 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation that they were free. But what mainstream media doesn't say is that Kentucky and Delaware did not abolish slavery until December 6, 1865, which was 6 months after Juneteenth. Okay? When we look at Maryland, Maryland did not abolish slavery until November 1st, 1864. They had to put it on the ballot. Okay, and it almost did not pass, but that's almost 2 years after Juneteenth. Tennessee did not abolish slavery until February 22nd, 1865. That's 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, 4 months before Juneteenth. So one of the biggest myths about Juneteenth is that it was the last day of slavery. It was not. It clearly was not. Kentucky and Delaware did not legally end slavery until December 6, 1865, 6 months later. So this misinformation is allowed to permeate because Americans are very ignorant of history. So Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday gives us an opportunity, one, to correct the history of Juneteenth, protect the history of Juneteenth, and to force into a national conversation a history that Republicans are passing laws, especially in former Confederate states, to suppress the teaching of this history, but also to teach the history, but also to teach the need of repairing the damage of a legacy of 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation, redlining, federal policies that harmed African Americans, etc., what we call collectively reparations or reparative justice.
You have made several good points that on there.
Okay.
Well, firstly, saying that Americans are very ignorant to history, a lot of that ignorance is willful. As you just stated, a state like Florida, they're intentionally trying to ban active teaching of Black history, and it's very disturbing to see. And what I wanted to follow up with you on was, though, so you said that it was Kentucky and Delaware, right, that didn't abolish slavery until December of 1865?
December 6, 1865, yeah. Tennessee didn't abolish it until February 1865, 4 months before Juneteenth. And just very quickly, the Emancipation Proclamation gave exemptions for territories that came back into the Union or territories that stayed loyal to the Union. Maryland, Missouri, Kentucky, and Delaware were the border states. They were exempt from the Emancipation Proclamation. They were allowed to keep their slaves. Tennessee came back into the Union in 1862. They were allowed to keep their slaves. And the Emancipation Proclamation basically stated that the territories in rebellion, those slaves would be freed if those territories did not come back into the Union by January 1st, 1863. But the Union had no legal authority to dictate to the Confederacy to do anything because those 11 states of the Confederacy seceded from the Union and set up their own government.
But they were no longer part of the United States at that time.
Right. This is why it's important to read these documents. You can go to archives.gov, which is the U.S. National Archives, or LOC.gov, which is the Library of Congress, and all these historical documents we can read, U.S. Constitution, Emancipation Proclamation. We can read all these documents, General Order Number 3, so we get a better understanding of them, as well as the Presidential Record Act of 1978 as well. You can read that there, too, at archives.gov.
We're talking to historian, researcher, radio host, and founder of the African History Network, Michael Imhotep. So, Michael, so when Kentucky and Delaware did finally ban slavery on December 6, 1865, I'm sure that all of the slave owners went automatically like, okay, well, bye guys, you're free now. So I'm sure it took a while for all of the slaves to all of the enslaved individuals to be released or to actually experience their freedom. Do we know definitively what the actual last day of slavery was?
Well, keep in mind it took military force to do this. Those territories had to be brought back into the Union. It took military force. If we look at example for Texas, June 19th was not the day that all 250,000 enslaved Africans in Texas got the word of General Order Number 3. It takes Major General Gordon Granger and his troops almost a year to go throughout Texas and physically bring Texas back into the Union and enforce it, okay? We know also there are going to be some slave owners in Texas that keep their enslaved Africans to 1866 at least, okay? And then we also know there's some Native American nations like the Cherokee, and, the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. Some of them are going to keep their slaves to 1866, 1867, which is why you had those Black Freedmen Indian treaties of 1866 between those Native American nations and the federal government. But you're going to have military force that brings this about, and many enslaved Africans, they're going to run away from the plantations when we get the word, either Juneteenth in 1865 or December 6, 1865.
Okay, yeah, pause it right there. Pause it right there, Doug. We're going to pick this up on the other side of the break, and I'm going to show you what General Order Number 3 said, because a lot of what's being repeated in the media is only the first 1 or 2 sentences. We'll be back in just a minute. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep, 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. Stand by. Back from breaking in 4 minutes. How's everybody doing? All right, back from break in 4 minutes, everybody. Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Back from break in 3 minutes. All right, back from break in 1 minute, everybody. Okay, we got Braden. Who else is watching? Who else is watching on our social media platforms? Post your comments here. Braden said he's watching from Gary, Indiana. All right, Braden. All right, back from break in 1 minute. You can support, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show.
Detroit's only African American talk radio. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. If great programming is what you want, 910 AM is what you need.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have the areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. So we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Okay, the calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. We know this past Monday was Juneteenth. There were celebrations throughout Metro Detroit, throughout the country. We know it's a federal holiday as well. It was signed into law June 17th, 2021 by President Joe Biden after it passed the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. We know there are African Americans who fought for decades to make it a federal holiday, like Opal Lee, African American female, former teacher, member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And there were others also who helped to make it a federal holiday. I was on Areva Martin's show, 1580 AM KBLA, out of Southern California on Thursday, June 22nd. And our topic was using Juneteenth as a tool to teach reparations. And we have to correct the history of Juneteenth and protect the history of Juneteenth. Before we go back to that clip, I just want to share with you, I talked about General Order number 3 and how in the media, they only read you a portion of what it said. If we look at this article here from blackpast.org, they have 6,000 pages of articles dealing with African history and African American history. Juneteenth, the growth of an American holiday. And if we go and look and see what they show you what General Order number 3 says. Also at archives.gov, you can read General Order number 3 there as well, because I looked at it at archives.gov also. June 19th, Major General Gordon Granger reads the contents of General Order number 3 from the balcony of Ashton Villa in Galveston, Texas. His proclamation announced, people of Texas are informed in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves free. Now, on the Rachel Maddow show this past Monday, June 19th, in other media, a lot of times they would just stop right there. They'll just read the first sentence, but you have to continue and read what the rest of it said. The rest of it says, this involves an absolute equality of personal rights and property rights between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. Okay, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. So they wanted the former slaves to stay on the plantations and to seek wages from their former slave owners. Okay, they didn't want them roaming the roads. They didn't want them running behind Union lines. They wanted them to stay on the plantations. Now, the freedmen, it goes on to say, the freedmen, the former slaves, the freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. Okay. Now we know that the chattel slavery does not legally end until the 13th Amendment is ratified December 6, 1865, when Georgia becomes the 27th state to pass the 13th Amendment. And you needed 3/4 of the state legislatures to pass an amendment to the U.S. Constitution for it to become law, All right. Now we're going to go back to this clip here from my appearance on the Reva Martin show, Reva Martin in Real Time, June 22nd, 2022. Let's go back to this clip, please, Doug.
Federal holidays, Emancipation Day in Washington, D.C. So we're going to see this fall at different periods of time. But we know the last day of chattel slavery being legal is made illegal officially December 6, 1865, when the 13th Amendment is amended. Is ratified when the 13th Amendment is ratified and the U.S. Constitution is amended.
So, in tying Juneteenth into reparations, how do we how do we kind of facilitate Juneteenth or use Juneteenth as a tool to teach about reparations?
Well, we teach about this history, what happened after slavery ends. We teach about the Reconstruction Era, and we bring all this history, the voter suppression, the domestic terrorism, the theft of land. We connect all this to the structural inequities that exist today. The racial wealth gap, 8-to-1. The median household wealth of a white family, $188,000 compared to $24,000 for an African-American family. It's not because white people work 8 times harder. It's not because they're 8 times smarter. It's because they had the help of the federal government. There were massive land giveaways like the Homestead Act of 1862 that gave away 270 million acres of land, and they gave away land for 124 years from 1862 to 1976. This was by Congress. African Americans are largely locked out of this massive land giveaway, even though we worked the land largely for free for 246 years. When we look at today, June 22nd, this is the anniversary of President Franklin Roosevelt, June 22nd, 1944, signing into law what's called the GI Bill. The GI Bill gave low-interest loans to World War II veterans to buy homes, go to college, go to trade school, and to start businesses. Well, African-American veterans, they earn those benefits, but many of them are going to be discriminated against and not be able to take advantage of these benefits that they earn and their taxpayer dollars paid for. And the GI Bill is one of the main policies in the 20th century that has increased the racial wealth gap. It changed who got to go to college. These World War II veterans are able to buy homes in the newly formed suburbs, and we're being discriminated against because of redlining, restrictive covenants, things of this nature, these various policies. So when we talk about this history and we talk about what these laws and policies that created the racial wealth gaps, then we can talk about the need for repairing the damage of this history, not just for 246 years of slavery, but what happened after slavery ends today, and these laws and policies that continue to inflict the harm on African Americans today.
Yeah, one thing that I think not enough people can appreciate is the significance of redlining.
Yes.
And how that was such an extreme barrier to generational wealth building. I mean, you're talking about people who are alive today who are either were not allowed to buy a home themselves, or their descendants are still suffering the consequences of their ancestor, their mother or father or grandparent not being able to buy a home. I mean, that one thing right there, that one policy affected so many people and so many families and so many generations in such a profound way. And I just want to see if you can kind of just talk about that a little bit more, about redlining and how that has really held back so many Black families from building wealth.
Well, absolutely. And redlining comes into existence about 1937, and you have you have real estate developers and banks that they draw red lines. They take a map and they draw red lines around areas in what we would call the inner city. And after World War II, they start building the suburbs. And you have the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts in 1952 and 1956 that drive 41,000 miles of interstate highway all throughout the country. They run through about 1,600 African-American communities and displace our businesses, displace our homes. And banks are denying loans to African Americans in those areas with the red lines drawn around them. These red areas are looked at as higher risk. And then when we try to use the benefits that we earn from the GI Bill, we try to take advantage of these loan programs from the federal government, from the Federal Housing Association, things like this. We're discriminated against in moving to the suburbs, which greatly impacts our ability to acquire an asset, acquire a home, and pass on generational wealth to our children, grandchildren. Also, when we look at something like the fact that African American homes are valued at $48,000 on average, $48,000 less than a comparable white home. The Brookings Institute, Andre Perry, has extensive research on this. This adds up to $156 billion in less value that African American homes have. Okay, there was a study from Citigroup Bank. CBS News has this article from September 2020 that talks about how the U.S. economy has lost $16 trillion because of racism just in the 20-year period of time from the year 2000 to 2019. And it cited the fact that they looked at African Americans not being able to get loans to go to college, not being able to get loans to start businesses, and also being discriminated when it comes to buying homes.
Okay, Paul. Yeah, pause it right there, Doug. When we come back from the break, we're going to go to the phone lines. We'll go to Kwame and anybody else on the phones. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number, and we'll continue that segment from my appearance on the Reva Martin show, dealing with using Juneteenth to teach reparations. You listen to the African History Network show, 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. All right, stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Okay, how's everybody doing? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Post your comments here. Okay, back from break in 3 minutes. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. Back from break in 3 minutes. Stand by, everybody. Back from break in 1 minute. How's everybody doing today? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like.
What you need. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have the areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. So we have a lot to talk about. We're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Before we go back to this clip, this interview that was done with me on Reva Martin in real time out of Southern California, dealing with using Juneteenth as a tool to teach about reparations. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Kwame, line one. Kwame, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Oh, I'm calling from Detroit.
From Detroit. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Well, you know, it's like Reconstruction is some kind of illusion. You know, Malcolm did say they talking about he really quote the idea that the South lost the war also. You know, but Reconstruction really was some kind of illusion. We're still fighting Civil War right now. It comes out in terms of racism.
Well, why was Reconstruction an illusion? Reconstruction was 1865 to 1877. Why was Reconstruction an illusion, and an illusion to whom?
It's an illusion. And first of all, a lot of people got killed. Thousands of black folks got killed. And they did reconstruct. They said it failed, but it wasn't even going on. Actually,
say it again. It was.
The
point is
that we're still fighting Civil War.
Kwame, slow down. We're gonna take this step.
It comes out in terms of race.
Kwame, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're gonna take this step by step. Now, you said thousands of black people were killed during Reconstruction.
Yeah.
What period of time was Reconstruction?
From 1865 to 1877.
Okay, now, why was Reconstruction an illusion? Because during this period of time, you have African Americans who are acquiring land. You have African Americans. There were about 2,000 African American men who get elected to public office. You have Reconstruction constitutions being passed, like in Alabama, 1867 Reconstruction Constitution, and it creates the first state-funded public school system in the South, and it's for both white children and African American children. Now, why you have the U.S. Bureau of Freedmen, Refugees, and Abandoned Lands created in March 1865 by Congress. You have the Freedmen's Bank created by act of Congress as well. Now, why was Reconstruction an illusion, as you said it was?
Because they took all that back.
They took all what back?
All the gains that we had in Reconstruction, they took all of that back.
Some of it was taken back.
And they're taking the script. They never really.
Now, how did they take it back?
They took it back through murder.
That wasn't all through murder.
I forgot that. But no, I studied because I just can't identify. Leroy Jones, I think he talks about it a lot. But
that wasn't all taken back through. That wasn't all taken back through murder. You had a declining commitment.
Thousands of people were murdered.
Kwame, I'm answering your question. You had a declining commitment from Republicans to continue to intervene in Southern affairs and Southern conflicts on behalf of African Americans. So in October 1871, President Ulysses S. Grant declares martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina using the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which was the third of the 4 enforcement acts. And you had the Department of Justice, which was created by Congress in 1870. And the Department of Justice is prosecuting Ku Klux Klan members, convicting them for attacking African Americans, for killing us, and other domestic terrorists. But then when the Clinton, Mississippi riot of 1875 takes place, then Ulysses S. Grant implements his policy of non-intervention in Southern affairs, and there was a declining commitment from Republicans to continue to come to the aid of African Americans. So then now what ends Reconstruction?
No problem.
What ends Reconstruction?
They didn't give us the power.
Kwame, we're not going to both talk at the same time, and we're short on time. What ends Reconstruction in 1877?
The North pulled out the troops from the South. I beg your pardon?
What ends Reconstruction in 1877?
The North pulled out the troops that protected black folks from Southerners.
Well, no. What happened is the compromise of 1877 between Rutherford B. Hayes and Republicans and
that's what I'm talking about.
Hold on. And Samuel J. Tilden and the Democrats. And the Democrats agreed to let Rutherford B. Hayes become president because neither Rutherford B. Hayes nor Samuel J. Tilden had enough electoral college votes to become president. And they agreed, the Democrats agreed to let Samuel J. Tilden become president in exchange for Samuel J. Tilden agreeing to remove the Union troops out of the South. It was a backdoor agreement between Democrats and Republicans to betray African Americans. Okay. All right. Thanks for calling, Kwame. We're coming up on another break. Thanks for calling. We're coming up on another break. It's important to understand the Reconstruction era and understand this history of what happened. Okay. And because now that Reconstruction era is then going to lead to the Lily White movement of 1928, when Republicans start to push African Americans out of the Republican Party. And in the 1928 presidential election, Republicans run Herbert Hoover as their candidate. Democrats run Al Smith, who's a moderate Democrat from New York, as their candidate. And Republicans appeal to Southern segregationist Democrats in 5 former Confederate states to get them to vote for Herbert Hoover. Republicans start to ignore the needs and concerns of African Americans. They ignore the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s that come back into power. The Klan comes back into power as a result largely of the movie The Birth of a Nation that debuts February 8th, 1915. And the movie The Birth of a Nation from director D.W. Griffith depicts the Ku Klux Klan as being the heroes, and the Klan puts down a rebellion from former Negro Union soldiers during the Reconstruction era. And at the end of the movie, The Birth of a Nation, and the movie's on YouTube, you can watch it. It's about 3 hours. It's a silent movie. It says this is the birth of a nation. The movie, The Birth of a Nation, is based upon a novel by a man named the Reverend Thomas Dixon. The novel was called The Klansman. So it's important to understand this chronology of history when we deal with this. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by, everybody. Back from break in 3 minutes. When we come back from break, we're going to finish this segment of the interview that was done with me on the Reva Martin show. Back from break in 2 minutes. Back from break in 1 minute.
(910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. If great programming is what you want, 910 AM is what you need.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have the areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, you don't know. So we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is a calling number if you have a question or comment. So we're discussing using Juneteenth, the federal holiday of Juneteenth, as a way to educate people, not just on the history of Reconstruction, the history of the Civil War and the end of slavery, but also educate people on the need for reparative justice, the need for reparations. And it's important to deal with what happens after slavery ends. The Reconstruction Era, 1865, 1877, then the Jim Crow era that's ushered in after the Compromise of 1877, Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, U.S. Supreme Court case, the Great Migration, 1915, 1970, African Americans, especially African American men, being discriminated against when they come back from overseas fighting in World War I, when World War I ends in 1918, and understand this history. And then the GI Bill, I mentioned the GI Bill in the interview on the Reva Martin show. You had $67 billion invested in the GI Bill from about 1945 to 1976. And African-American men especially are going to be greatly discriminated against when it comes to being able to use the benefits that they earned and our taxpayer dollars paid for. So we have some information on the GI Bill here in just a minute. I'm going to go back to this clip here from Reva Martin's show when we were discussing this, and Avi Bernard, her producer, was interviewing me. Let's go back to this clip here, please, Doug.
They take a map and they draw red lines around areas in what we would call the inner city. And after World War II, they start building the suburbs. And you have the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts in 1952 and 1956 that drive 41,000 miles of interstate highway all throughout the country. They run through about 1,600 African-American communities and displace our businesses, displace our homes. And banks are denying loans to African-Americans in those areas with the red lines drawn around them. These red areas are looked at as higher risk. And then when we try to use the benefits that we earn from the GI Bill, we try to take advantage of these loan programs from the federal government, from the Federal Housing Association, things like this. We're discriminated against in moving to the suburbs, which greatly impacts our ability to acquire an asset, acquire a home, and pass on generational wealth to our children and our grandchildren. Also, when we look at something like the fact that African American homes are valued at $48,000, on average $48,000 less than a comparable white home. The Brookings Institute, Andre Perry, has extensive research on this. This adds up to $156 billion in less value that African American homes have. Okay, there was a study from Citigroup Bank. CBS News has this article from September 2020 that talks about how the U.S. economy has lost $16 trillion because of racism, just in a 20-year period of time from the year 2000 to 2019. And it cited the fact that they looked at African Americans not being able to get loans to go to college, not being able to get loans to start businesses, and also being discriminated when it comes to buying homes. And it also goes on to say that if these policies were corrected in the next 5 years, the U.S. economy can grow by $5 trillion. And one of the most important things to talk about when we deal with the structural inequities, and what this study from Citigroup shows, is how racism negatively impacts everyone in America, even though the brunt of the harm is directed towards African Americans. The policies that are good for African Americans, like student loan forgiveness, are also good for America. So when we talk about repairing the damage, we also have to talk about how it's good, not just for African Americans, but other people, how it's good for America to have this reparative justice. Because the majority of the people that have to vote on these policies are white. In the U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, let's be honest, the majority of the people that have to vote on these policies are white. So we also have to talk about how this benefits other people.
Well, it's such a good point. People need to know that racism doesn't just affect the people you're being racist towards. It affects all of us.
Right. And racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to education, access to opportunity, jobs, media, etc., and they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. Racism is not a feeling. It's not about not liking people. It's about a power structure.
Absolutely. Before we run out of time, though, Michael, I want to talk your course. You have a 12-week online history course that starts this Saturday. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, June 24th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, ancient Kemet, one of the original names of Egypt, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. The Ma'afa is a Kiswahili term, which means the Great Disaster, which is our Holocaust. This deals with understanding the transatlantic slave trade. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We deal with ancient Africa, Nubia, ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the African Moors, who take the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe. This brings Europe out of the Dark Ages, when we go and see what leads to the transatlantic slave trade taking place, so we can better understand history of the day. So it's a 12-week online course. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. A year from now, 2 years from now, you can watch the entire class. It's very visual. I do a PowerPoint presentation. It's about 80 to 100 articles we reference. People can register at our website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com. They can also call us 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003. And this information, the class is PG-13, so you can use it with your youth as well, with the children.
TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure having you.
Hey, Avi, thanks. Tell Reba I said hi too.
I will do that. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, pause right there. Okay, so that was KBLA 1580 AM out of Southern California. I was on June 22nd of Reba Martin in real time. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Very quickly here, and then I'm going to go to this segment from Roland Martin Unfiltered when I guest hosted on Friday, June 23rd. Read this article here from Time Magazine. Now, I deal with this in my classes that when we deal with history from 1800 to 1968, my Sunday class, Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968, because we deal with this period of history. This is from Time Magazine, time.com. A new report finds that 45 states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War. Okay. And they're talking about the Reconstruction Era, which is a critical period in the history of this country. And it's known about even less than about slavery, even less than the Reconstruction Era. This article is from January 12, 2022. Okay. And the excerpt of the article says, in the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago, the January 6th insurrection, January 6, 2021, at the U.S. Capitol, many leading historians drew parallels between the violence that we saw on January 6, 2021 and the Reconstruction Era, the period of political revolution directly following the American Civil War. Quote, the events we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction Era and the overthrow of Reconstruction, which was often accompanied or accomplished, I should say, by violent assaults on elected officials, This was said by Eric Foner, who's one of the top authorities when it comes to the history of Reconstruction. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and author of Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863-1877. He said this in an interview with the New Yorker published a week after the January 6, 2021 insurrection. Now, the article from the Time Magazine goes on to say, scholars say studying the aftermath of the Civil War can help put in context many of the most seminal events in the U.S. in recent years, from the brutal murder of George Floyd by police May 25th, 2020, to the voter suppression laws enacted after African-American voters played a role in helping Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be elected president and vice president in 2020. But despite the timeliness of the era in today's climate, many students in American schools will not get a full education on Reconstruction until they go to college. Okay, but most of them are not going to go to college. That's the problem. You have to really understand this Reconstruction Era and how a lot of the progress we were making was reversed, but also that backroom deal between Democrats and Republicans that brought Reconstruction to an end with the Compromise of 1877. Now, in social studies standards for 45 out of 50 states and the District of Columbia, discussion of Reconstruction is partial or non-existent. Discussion of Reconstruction is partial or non-existent. According to historians who reviewed how the period is discussed in K through 12 social studies standards for public schools nationwide, in a report produced by the education nonprofit Zen Education Project, and I read a lot of their articles at the Zen Education Project, the study's authors say they are concerned that American children will grow up uninformed about a critical period of history that helps explain why full racial equality remains unfulfilled today. So we have to use this federal holiday of Juneteenth, as I've said before, to force into the national conversation a history that Republicans are passing laws in these former Confederate states, especially, to suppress the teaching of this history. And we also have to use this tool to give America the massive history lesson that it needs. One, two, use Juneteenth to educate people on the need for reparative justice as well. All right. Then also when it comes to redlining, there's a good article from history from who is this from? This is from this one from Juneteenth. There's one from blackpast.org. There's one from blackpast.org dealing with redlining as well. And let me pull this one up here. Okay, look up redlining at blackpast.org. There's one there also. The Washington Post has a good piece dealing with this article here that I cited in my lectures this past week. The Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery. Here's what did. The Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery. Here's what did. 2 states, Delaware and Kentucky, still allowed slavery until the 13th Amendment was ratified 6 months after Juneteenth. So why isn't that talked about in mainstream media? They point to Texas, but Delaware and Kentucky still allowed slavery 6 months after Juneteenth ended. Okay. The limits of the Emancipation Proclamation. Here's an excerpt from the article. As a legal matter, slavery officially ended in the United States December 6, 1865, when the 13th Amendment was ratified by 3/4 of the then states, which was 27 out of 36 states. Georgia ratified the 13th Amendment December 6, 1865. The 13th Amendment becomes law and amends the U.S. Constitution. The text reads in part, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Some legal historians, activists, even filmmakers have seen the exception clause as a loophole included to appease the South, allowing states to reinstitute slave-like conditions as change. Okay, that's not why that's there. That's because of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart. Give us a like on this broadcast. Back from break in 4 minutes, everybody. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. We have the information at our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. All right, stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes.
On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent through and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. Then you have the areas of expertise. But some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. So we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right, the call-in number is 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay, so right before the break, I was sharing this article here from the Washington Post dealing with the Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery. Here's what did. And I started talking about the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Now, this article is this is an analysis by Clarence Lucene, June 25th, 2021. And it also talks about how Delaware and Kentucky still allowed slavery until December 6, 1865, which was 6 months after Juneteenth. Okay. So if you go to archives.gov, now most people never heard of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which is what abolished slavery in the Northwest Territory, which was Ohio, the Ohio area, 1787. This happened before the U.S. Constitution became law, before the Constitution was voted on and signed September 13, 1787. It was officially titled an ordinance for the government of the territory of the United States northwest of the River Ohio, and is going to end slavery in that territory. And the language of the 13th Amendment comes from, which talks about involuntary servitude is prohibited except as being duly convicted of a crime. That language comes from the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. That's where it comes from, because those laws already applied to white men. Okay, those laws already applied to white men, and what they're doing is after the Civil War ends, they're given the same rights that white men have, given those to African Americans, especially the former slaves. So when people think this is a loophole and it was designed to re-enslave African Americans, that's false. That comes from a lack of understanding of history and just bad information out here, especially coming from that documentary 13th by Ava DuVernay. Okay, the whole premise of the documentary is false. If you read Article 6 of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, it says, there shall be neither slavery nor involuntary servitude in the said territory otherwise than in the punishment of crimes whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, provided always that any person escaping into the same, from whom labor or service is lawfully claimed in any one of the original states, such fugitive may be lawfully reclaimed and conveyed to the person claiming his or her labor or service as aforesaid. Okay, so read the entire Northwest Ordinance of 1787. It's going to abolish slavery in that Northwest Territory. But also, what happens is in 1866, the year after the 13th Amendment, you have the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and this allows African Americans to enter into contracts and labor contracts and like negotiate for wages, things of this nature. So what they're doing is they're giving the same rights that white people have, especially white men. They're giving those to African Americans, especially African American men. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 lays the foundation for the 14th Amendment of 1868. All right, so it's just urban legend, it's just myth that the 13th Amendment re-enslaved African Americans. No, that's not what happened. And if you think that's what created mass incarceration, then why did it take 106 years for mass incarceration to happen? Because if you look at the incarceration rates, with incarceration numbers overall, from say 1865 to 1970, they're relatively low incarceration numbers. Now, African Americans were disproportionately incarcerated. Yeah, our numbers, we were disproportionately represented in incarceration rates. That is true. But like 1970, there's only about 300,000 people in prisons. Okay, you had a relatively low number. From 1971 to 1993, it quadruples. It goes from 300,000 to about 1.3 million. It wasn't because of the 94 crime bill everybody talks about. That wasn't signed until September 13th, 1994. That wasn't because of the crime bill. You have to go back to June 17th, 1971, when Richard Nixon declared his war on drugs. The war on drugs didn't start with the crime bill. The war on drugs started with Richard Nixon, who's a Republican last time I checked. Why Republicans like Candace Owens and a lot of these buck dancing black Negroes who claim to be conservatives, why they don't want to tell you that Richard Nixon started the war on drugs and declare war on the African American community? I don't know, but maybe it's because the white people who finance them won't let them tell you this. Okay. So read those articles, and then also this one here dealing with the GI Bill. June 22nd, 1944, President Roosevelt signs the GI Bill, which the GI Bill was good, but the way it was distributed in southern states, it was distributed at the state level as opposed to being distributed from the federal level. It allowed these southern segregation of states to discriminate against African Americans. Read this from history.com, official website of the History Channel, and we're going to see that $67 billion from about 1945 to 70 is going to be invested in African Americans are going to be discriminated against, especially when it comes to the how the funds are distributed, how the resources are distributed. And the GI Bill allowed white veterans to get funds to start businesses, go to college, and to buy homes. Okay, so and this is going to be one of the main policies of the 20th century that is going to increase the racial wealth gap in this country. There was an article from also history.com that deals with specifically how the GI Bill discriminated against African-American men coming back from World War II. Okay. And the name of this article here, and I'm going to pull it up here quickly. The name of this article is How the GI Bill's Promise Was Denied to 1 Million Black World War II Veterans. How the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans. The sweeping bill promised prosperity to veterans, so why didn't Black Americans benefit? Okay. And it talks about the discrimination that happened in the South and how segregation and a lack of resources at African-American schools or schools that we were allowed to attend in the South and colleges and things like this, and restrictions on the skilled trades and skilled trade schools, how all this limited after the 1.2 million Black veterans being able to benefit from these benefits that they earned. While the GI Bill's language did not specifically exclude African-American veterans from its benefits, it was structured in a way that ultimately shut doors for the 1.2 million Black veterans who had bravely served their country during World War II in segregated ranks. There was also fear of Black advancement as well. When lawmakers began drafting the GI Bill in 1944, some Southern Democrats feared that returning Black veterans would use public sympathy for veterans to advocate against Jim Crow laws. To make sure the GI Bill largely benefited white people, the Southern Democrats drew on tactics that they had previously used to ensure that the New Deal helped as few Black people as possible. During the drafting of the law, the chair of the House Veterans Committee, Mississippi segregationist Mississippi Congressman John Rankin, played hardball and insisted that the program be administered by individual states instead of the federal government. He got his way. Mississippi Congressman John Rankin was known for his virulent racism. He defended segregation. He opposed interracial marriage and had even proposed legislation to confine, then deport every person with Japanese heritage during World War II. Okay, so read the rest of this article here. How the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans. Okay, we're going to clip 2, Doug, here that I sent you from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Now, On Friday, I'm a panelist each Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered. This Friday, I found out I was going to guest host the show. So I said, no problem, we can do this. And on Friday, June 23rd, President Biden signed an executive order expanding access to contraceptives, birth control. We talked about this as well. Let's go to clip number 2, Doug.
The past 48 hours have shaken Russia and really confused much of the world. The news still breaking overnight.
Doug, clip number 2 from Roland Martin Unfiltered. I emailed it to you. Stop the clip. Stop the clip. Stop the clip. Clip number 2 from Roland Martin Unfiltered. I emailed it to you separately. We'll have to do that on the other side of the break. When we come back, we'll go to that. There's an article from, let's see, where's that article from? There's an article from, we'll get to that. Let's see. There's one from, hold on, let me find this here. Okay, we'll deal with this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show on Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Stand by, back from break in 4 minutes. Okay, back from break in 4 minutes. Back from break in 2 minutes.
910, the Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. If great programming is what you want, 910 AM is what you need.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. Then they have the areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. So we have a lot to talk about. We're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Okay, on Friday, June 23rd, I guest hosted Roland Martin Unfiltered and found out about 90 minutes before the show started I was going to guest host. I was scheduled to be a panelist, but hey, it happens like that. You in media and things are live, it happens like this. We discussed, one of the topics was, we discussed President Biden signing an executive order expanding access to birth control. Let's go to this clip here, please, Doug.
President Joe Biden is seeking to bolster access to contraception as the nation marks a year since the Supreme Court decision overturning federal abortion protections. Biden's executive order aims to strengthen and expand access to contraception. Biden's declaration will direct the government to consider ways to make affordable over-the-counter contraception, including emergency contraception, more accessible, including emergency contraception, more accessible, which includes pharmacies, employers, and insurers. Today, top Democrats marked the 1 year of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, with President Biden attending a reproductive rights event where he spoke about the executive order to protect women's rights to choose.
After the disaster came down, I signed 2 executive orders. My administration took a number of actions to protect the access to reproductive health care. And it's just the way I signed the 3rd executive order, which is to strengthen the affordability of high-quality contraception. The idea that we had to do that. Really, think about it. Think about it. I know I'm 198 years old. But all kidding aside, think about that. I never, ever thought I'd be signing an executive order protecting the right to contraception. But the only sure way to protect a woman's health and rights is for Congress to pass a law.
Okay, so that was President Biden. Now, Massachusetts Representative Ayanna Pressley is leading the charge to get the Abortion Justice Act passed in Congress. Last June, the Supreme Court's Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization decision overturned the landmark 1973 Roe versus Wade decision, legalizing the right to an abortion. The Abortion Justice Act is a comprehensive bill that calls for necessary federal investments in abortion care, including training, research, outreach, doula care, and innovation. It requires insurance coverage, including abortion care. It protects patients and providers from criminalization. It affirms a legal right to abortion and miscarriage care. It removes systemic barriers to care, including for immigrant families, and it addresses disparity and systemic racism in the healthcare system. Representative Ayanna Pressley, who was joined by lawmakers and advocates who unveiled the bill at a Capitol Hill press conference earlier today, says the Abortion Justice Act, Abortion Justice Act will.
In a just America, abortion care is normalized, and we speak plainly about the many varied circumstances where abortion care is sought. In a just America, bodily autonomy is treated as a right codified in law, and your access to care is not dependent on your zip code or your immigration status, your income, or your background. Our bill moves us closer to a truly just America by protecting patients and providers from criminalization, removing systemic barriers to care, and calling for bold federal investments in abortion care, including training, research, outreach, doula care, facilities, innovation, and access. Let me be clear. A just America is possible. And I look forward to the day where our bodily autonomy is our own. Before Roe was decided, people flung themselves downstairs or maimed themselves with wire hangers to terminate a pregnancy. I remember the stories of hearing women sitting on a toilet full of ammonia and waiting. Sepsis was the leading cause of death for people seeking abortion care. Restricting access to abortion did not stop women from needing abortion. Rather, it only forced more people into dangerous and life-saving situations. If the so-called, they call themselves the pro-life folks, if the forced birth folks, if that movement was sincere in its attempt to protect life, they would save lives by not only protecting access to abortion care, but by expanding access to sexual and reproductive care, health care. The truth is, we know that Roe, it was always the floor. That's right. It was just the floor. So before, during, and after Roe, marginalized communities have always faced barriers to care. As lawmakers, we have a responsibility to do all that we can to protect reproductive rights, and that's just what the Abortion Justice Act does.
Vice President Kamala Harris participated in the exclusive roundtable discussion called 1 Year Post-Roe, a readout special with VP Harris, featuring Joanne Reed and people impacted by the Dobbs decision. Here's some of that discussion.
Amanda and I were in Tallahassee together, and her story, like so many, is a story of needing emergency medical care and being denied because of the confusion. And what we're seeing, so many physicians and healthcare providers who are now really worried about what that does also in terms of access to all kinds of reproductive health care. In the top 10 states with the worst maternal mortality, in the top 10 states in the United States of America that have the worst maternal mortality, those top 10 states also have bans in place. Yeah, think about what that means in hypocrisy at play. When people purport to say that their position is because they care about women and children, right, but yet you don't have and don't give them access to high quality and affordable care, including postpartum care. Let's also talk about that. And what that means, again, in terms of, really conflicting signals, but actually hypocrisy at play.
With that, I want to go back to my panel, Kelly Bethea and Matt Manning. Kelly, we're going to start with you. So oftentimes we hear, or at least I hear, insensitive things coming from men when it deals with women's reproductive rights. And oftentimes women's reproductive rights just gets reduced down to abortion. And let's just be honest, some men may get mad at me. A lot of men don't understand women's bodies. Okay, let's just put that out there. Okay, first of all, what do you think about this executive order? And what are some things that you think men should know when it comes to women's reproductive rights that we may not know?
So, two-pronged question. What do I think about the executive order? I think that Biden should never have had to need to sign it in the first place. Like he said, he's 198 years old, and he never thought he'd see the day where he would have to govern women's bodies in the positive, if at all. So I'm glad he signed it. It's some form of protection. But we've got a long way to go, again, because to your second point, what do men know about women's bodies? Absolutely nothing. What do men need to know about women's bodies? Absolutely nothing. Mind your damn business. You're not the one birthing the kid. You are contributing by way of sperm to possibly fertilize the kid, but you're not birthing that kid. Your teeth aren't potentially going to fall out because of that kid. You're not about to have postpartum depression because of that kid. You're not about to have, your life at stake because you put your penis inside somebody's vagina. And I hate to be that vulgar, but that's really what it is. Mind your business. That's all this is. This is about control. This is about maintaining your hubris and ignorance on the matter, because you can't stand the fact that there is an entity out there being women that knows something, anything more than you. That's all this is. And frankly, I'm tired of it. The fact.
Okay, we'll continue this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. You'll get to hear my response also, and response from Matt Manning. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. Also, when we come back from the break, we'll go to the phone lines. We'll talk to PG, who's holding on line 1. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. Stand by, bathroom break in 4 minutes. Stand by, everybody. All right, stand by, everybody. Back from break in 2 minutes. Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App. Also, be sure to register for our new 12-week online class that teach on Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So if you miss class number 1, as soon as you register, you can watch it. Back from break in 1 minute. All right, post your comments here. Who we have watching us right now?
910, the Superstation, the oldest radio station in town since 1922. If great programming is what you want, 910 AM is what you need.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. Then you have the area of expertise. But some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. So we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right. Before we go back to that segment when I was guest hosting Roland Martin Unfiltered, dealing with President Biden signing an executive order on Friday, June 23rd, expanding access to contraceptives. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to PG on line 1. PG, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Well, good evening. Thank you for taking my call. I'm calling from the United States in the state of Michigan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, because I'm hearing a lot of distortion on your end.
Okay, go ahead. I can hear you. On the air.
So I wanted to ask you about a topic that a group of us ladies was talking about over the Freedom Weekend. And the question came up, should the guys that contributed to the demise of our Black community and our Black families by pushing product, should they be entitled to pay Black neighborhoods and Black families reparations? And I had no idea how to answer the question because I had never thought about it. So I was wondering what you and your panel think about guys that have distributed products in the Black community that caused the demise of the Black family. Should they be responsible to pay reparations? If yes, why? If no, why?
Okay.
And I thank you so much for taking my question.
Thanks. Very quickly, because we're running out of time here. The answer is no. The reason why is because the selling of drugs in the community. One, we don't own the poppy fields. We didn't bring the drugs into the country. We didn't bring the cocaine into the country. We didn't do any of that. Okay. So and study Freeway Rick Ross and how his connection was like a CIA informant. So if anybody should pay reparations for that, it's the federal government. Okay. But we're not the ones that did that, generally speaking. Now, some people may bring up Frank Lucas, who the movie American Gangster was made about, and Denzel Washington portrayed him. But Frank Lucas only did that for maybe about 2, maybe 3 years or so before he gets sent to prison. And it was a lot of crooked police officers in the New York City Police Department that Frank Lucas took down also. Okay. But no, and the drugs coming into the community, hold on just a second. The drugs coming into the community and being sold in the community, you also have to deal with how the infrastructure in the African American community was taken out, and the businesses and corporations taken out, moved to the suburbs. And then expressways ran through the African American community because of the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts of 1952 and 56 that drive 41,000 miles of U.S. interstate highway all throughout the African American communities. And across the U.S., they run through about 1,600 African American communities and wipe out homes and businesses that we own. All right, now I got to go back to this clip here. Okay, so we're going back to this clip here from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Friday, June 23rd, we're dealing with President Biden signing an executive order expanding contraception, access to contraceptives. Let's go back to this clip, please, Doug.
And I hate to be that vulgar, but that's really what it is. Mind your business. That's it, because that's all this is. This is about control. This is about maintaining your hubris and ignorance on the matter, because you can't stand the fact that there is an entity out there being women that knows something, anything more than you. That's all this is. And frankly, I'm tired of it. The fact that I'm 32 years old and there's a possibility that I will live longer than I've had the right to my own body is absolutely disgusting to me. So, you know, what can men do? Go to hell about it, frankly. I really do not care. I'm not in a mood. It's raining outside. It's gloomy. It matches my mood. I'm tired.
Okay. So Matt, let me come to you. So you're down there in Texas with Governor Greg Abbott, who said he's going to abolish rape. I don't know how he's progressing towards that. What are your thoughts on this executive order?
In an allegedly free country, the people should not have to beg for the freedom to make decisions about their bodies. In an allegedly free country, the people should not have to beg their representatives to make decisions that allow them to have maximum freedom. In an allegedly free country, we should not have to beg for the basics of health care. In an allegedly free country, we should not expect that the states are going to now try to attack an executive order that expands access to health care. In an allegedly free country, we should have much greater access to health care, abortion, and beyond. That's what this comes down to, because in an allegedly free country, people are not subject to the whims of other people's religion, and that religion shutting down their ability to have access to decisions with their body. What this comes down to is freedom. And this comes down to, obviously, women know their bodies better than we do, but beyond that, all people, by virtue of their existence, have the right to decide what is best for them as it relates to health issues. And that does not matter to me if it matters to you, rather, that your opinion is this person should not do this by virtue of your value system. You don't have to make that choice. That's what's so absurd about this debate, is this idea that the choice that you make somehow affects my life. It does not, right? So the fact that we even have to get to this point is a problem, and it shows the fact that we don't actually live in a free country. But beyond that, I would expect with this executive order, I'm glad that Joe Biden took this step, but I suspect that Texas and other groups, right, states and groups are going to attack this and say he does not have the right to expand this access. And the problem for me is the fact that we even have to beg our representatives to codify something that we have as a natural, make decisions about our bodies and our health care. I mean, it's really absurd that we even have to beg them to do that. And the fact that, I mean, I love Atlanta Presley, so I'm not at all accusing her of this, but the fact that what we see in the wake of these is we see people trying to increase their own political stock by being the one who comes out and champions a certain issue is a problem. Because we, the people, should recognize we don't have to beg 600 people in D.C. to give us what's already ours, right? The fact that Congress has moved swiftly on a law with this should be disgusting to everybody. And the reality with healthcare, frankly, is in our country, it is still entirely too commodified, and it's entirely too based on a patchwork of laws.
Okay, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, our fan page, The African History Network on Facebook, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Keep watching. We're going to keep going for a few more minutes and finish that clip. Visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Register for my online classes. We had classes that start up on Saturday, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace. All right, stand by. Let's continue. Let's continue this clip here. Stand by here. Okay, we'll start this up.
Based on a patchwork of laws. It should be easy to get healthcare in this country, and it should be your sacred right to decide what healthcare you want in your life and what's appropriate to your life. And that's what I think, this executive order should open the door to.
All right, thanks, Matt. Well, with African American
and just
women,
a little bit, abortion care is health care. That's all it is. I just wanted to put that out there. I'm done.
Right. And I know we're coming up on a break, but with African-American women dying at almost 4 times the rate of white women when it comes to pregnancy-related issues, then all African-American men need to be concerned about women's reproductive rights. Okay. Roland Martin and the Filter will be right back here on the Black Star Network. This is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. So that was another excerpt, another segment of me hosting Roland Martin Unfiltered Friday, June 23rd. You can watch the entire show at Roland's YouTube channel, Roland Martin on YouTube, or on his Facebook page, also Roland Martin on Facebook as well. And then we have some clips on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. Read this article. Okay, so Axios.com has an article dealing with this. Let's see. Let's go to this Axios article quickly here. Biden to sign executive order to expand free birth control access. And it talks about how Biden will, on Friday, June 23rd, sign an executive order aimed at expanding free access to contraception on the eve of the one-year anniversary of the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, Dobbs ruling. This is Biden's third reproductive health related executive order since Roe v. Wade was overturned last June 2022, and the first not to address abortion access. The order directs the executive order directs the Treasury, Labor, and Health and Human Services departments to consider new guidance to ensure that private health insurers cover all contraceptives approved by the Food and Drug Administration without cost sharing. These departments also have to take action to, quote, improve access to affordable over-the-counter contraception, including emergency contraception. Okay, so read the rest of this article here. Biden is also directing the Education Department to, quote, convene institutions of higher education to share best practices and ways to make sure that students understand their options for accessing contraception, end quote, per a White House fact sheet. Read the rest of this article. Biden has signed executive order to expand free birth control access. There's also a fact sheet at whitehouse.gov on this executive order as well. And that is, let's see, where is the... Okay, yeah. Here's the fact sheet at whitehouse.gov. You can read this also. Whitehouse.gov is the official website of the White House. This is from June 23rd. Flip over to this here. Okay, June 23rd, 2023, fact sheet. President Biden issues executive order on strengthening access to contraception. Okay, so that's at whitehouse.gov. It explains this as a result of the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, a U.S. Supreme Court decision, and it goes through and explains what the executive order does. Okay. Also, we heard from Representative Ayanna Pressley in that segment. Read this article here from Yahoo News.com, picked up from thehill.com. Pressley seeks to decriminalize abortion through new legislation. This is from Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. Pressley seeks to decriminalize abortion through new legislation. All right, now, we have to move quickly here. Last Sunday we discussed this bogus story that Tyler Perry had purchased BET. Okay, and I went through why that was not true, why that was a fake story, etc. Now, the New York Post, and I'm not a big fan of the New York Post, but the New York Post has a article from June 20th, 2023, that explains that reportedly Tyler Perry is complaining about the $3 billion asking price for BET. Okay, and if we look quickly here at this article, and you can read it in its entirety. Let's see here. Let's go to this article here from the New York Post. And just a second, waiting for this to flip over here on the screen share. All right, stand by. This is okay. Here we go. This is running slowly. Okay, Tyler Perry balks at $3 billion price for Paramount BET. And if we look at this article here, it says media mogul Tyler Perry refuses to cough up $3 billion plus that Paramount is asking in an auction of BET, Black Entertainment Television, and the fierce haggling has begun to throw a sale into doubt, the New York Post has learned. Tyler Perry is losing patience with the drawn-out process after making an offer that's short of $3 billion, a price tag that other investors also consider to be lofty, according to a source close to the situation. The filmmaker Tyler Perry, who already owns 25% of BET, he owns a 25% stake in BET, has private equity backing for his offer, the insider added. Quote, he is used to getting his way and is frustrated, the source said, adding that final bids are due by mid-July. Now, Paramount Global bought BET for $2.7 billion in the year 2000 when the Shari Redstone owned company was called Viacom. Okay, and that was Sumner Redstone. The company wants roughly 10 times the BET Group's current $325 million in EBITDA or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, sources said. However, the continuing decline in cable's popularity as more people cut the cord figures to be a drag on BET Group's future earnings. Now, Paramount Global, which includes CBS, the CBS TV network, CBS, MTV, Paramount Pictures, the recently launched Paramount Plus streaming service, and book publisher Simon & Schuster, had $15.6 billion in long-term debt as of March 2023, according to public findings. Read the rest of this article. It goes on to say there was an erroneous report by entertainment news site The Streamer last week that Tyler Perry had won the auction, leading to premature congratulations from Tyler Perry's Madea co-star Keke Palmer. We talked about this last Sunday and how that was a fake story. Streamer.com removed the story after a day or so after it's up, but all these articles were written by outlets citing that retracted story. Okay. Weather Channel owner Byron Allen is also in the hunt, according to an inside source. Meanwhile, private equity firm CVC Capital Partners, which partnered with Group Black, a media company that teamed with celebrities including rapper 50 Cent and NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal, is out of the process, leaving Group Black looking for a well-funded partner, two sources said. Paramount Global is holding a separate auction for Simon & Schuster Publishing Company. So read the rest of this article. Paramount's BET sale in doubt as Tyler Perry balks at $3 billion price, sources say. This is by Josh Kosman and Alexandria Steigrid, June 20th, 2023, for the New York Post. All right, now, okay, I want to go quickly here to this next article. Then we have to get out to this next topic. Then we have to get out of here. So there was an attempted coup, it appears, in Russia on Saturday, June 24th. It happened very quickly and it was put down. It was negotiated and just disappeared. But experts are saying that it shows Putin's weakness. And this also involved the mercenary group, the Wagner group, which also operates in Africa and commits all types of atrocities wherever they go. So NBC News has this article, NBCnews.com, Prigozhin's armed rebels backed down, but Putin's rule is now more uncertain than ever. The crisis was unprecedented in Russia's recent history and may forever tarnish the image of the country's strongman president, analysts told NBC News. Now, this article is from June 25th, 2023. And also, there was good reporting from, Good Morning America as well. There was good reporting from Good Morning America on Sunday, June 25th. And we're going to go to this clip also here from Good Morning America here in just a minute. Let me find that clip here. Where is that? Okay, this one right here, clip number 3. We'll go to that here in just a minute, because after we only have we're only on 9:10 a.m. WFDF for 2 hours. So after that, I lose my board operator, so I have to do everything. And I have to cue these clips up. All right. Now, if we look at this article quickly, the mercenaries march to Moscow may have ended, but the short-lived armed rebellion has exposed deep weaknesses inside the Kremlin and undermined Russian President Vladimir Putin's 23-year rule like never before. The crisis was unprecedented in Russia's recent history and may forever tarnish the image of the country's strongman president, analysts told NBC News. With this authoritarian veneer besmirched by the consequences of his own war in Ukraine and 2 decades of a divide and rule approach, it's unclear what's next for Vladimir Putin. Now, Bill Browder, who's an American-born human rights lawyer and leading Putin critic, said this is a devastating blow to Putin's image as a strongman. If a warlord with just 25,000 men is able to take over several cities in Russia and make it to Moscow unopposed, it shows that Putin's authority as a dictator is completely fake, end quote. Now, Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia under President Barack Obama, agreed that even this fleeting display of insubordination would gravely hurt the Russian president. Former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, who you see oftentimes on MSNBC, said, I don't think he's mortally weakened. I think he can survive. I think he can survive this, but he is much weaker today than he was 24 hours ago. So read the rest of this article here. Prigozhin's armed rebels backed down, but Putin's rule is now more uncertain than ever. Now, on Good Morning America, Sunday, June 25th, they discussed the latest developments here, and I want to go to, let's go to this clip. All right. All right. So that was from Good Morning America, June 25th, 2023. Okay. Now, if we go quickly here to this article from, let's see, I want to look at the one from NBC News. Russian mercenaries. Now, this is an article from June 1st, 2023. I posted this article when it came out on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. Russian mercenaries exploit a war-torn African nation as they lead Putin's fight in Ukraine. This is about the Wagner Group. This article is about the Wagner Group. It's from June 1st, 2023. When I posted it, it got very little response on our fan page, the African History Network. It should have, thousands of people should have read this article. This is about the Wagner Group that was led by Prigozhin, and there was an attempted coup apparently in Russia because of these mercenaries who are committing all types of atrocities in African countries, especially the Central African Republic. Russian mercenaries exploit a war-torn African nation as they lead Putin's fight in Ukraine. Okay. Now, in the article, and this is from Gabe Joslow for NBC News. President Faustin Tadera says he called in the Russians because he was stuck. He called in the Russians because he was stuck. He's the president of the Central African Republic. It was 2016, soon after his election, and rebels had overturned swaths of the resource-rich country, which is among the world's poorest nations. Former colonial power France announced it would withdraw its soldiers, the backbone of a United Nations force aimed at quelling the country's civil war. And Tudera's army and militia did not have enough weapons to defeat fighters threatening the capital. Because the Central African Republic was under a UN arms embargo put in place after a previous rebel takeover. So the former mathematics professor turned to Moscow, turned to Russia, turned to Putin. While Russia received approval from the UN Security Council to deploy military trainers to assist the Central African country's government, Moscow sent in the infamous Wagner Group, Quote, I could not sit idly by. I asked all my friends, including the United States, including France. President Tudera, who's 66 years old, said during an exclusive interview with NBC News last week. Well, it would have been late May 2023 this interview took place. Quote, I need to protect the population. I need to protect the institutions of the republic. I asked everyone for help, and was I supposed to refuse the help from those who wanted to help us, he added. But Wagner's help is not free. The Wagner Group's help is not free. In exchange for its work, the Wagner Group has gained direct access to the Central African Republic's natural resources, according to Saoirse McLeod, a member of the UN Working Group on the Use of Mercenaries. She said, quote, we received information in Central African Republic that the Wagner Group, the W is pronounced as a V, for those that don't know, the Wagner Group was being paid in mining concessions. The Wagner Group is being paid in mining concessions. Trading in natural resources gives the Wagner Group and Russia a way to evade sanctions put in place since the start of the war in Ukraine in February 2022. And now, despite Wagner sending tens of thousands of fighters to the war in Ukraine, many of them are former prisoners. there's been no exodus of the group from Africa. There's been no exodus of the group from Africa. Instead, there's been a doubling down of Wagner's presence and an expansion into other countries. The mercenary group is operating in a volatile environment. The Central African Republic has suffered from a series of coups and failed governments since gaining independence from France in 1960. The latest coup in 2013, which saw Christian and Muslim militias pitted against each other, was organized by Seleka, a coalition of rebel groups. Okay, a coalition of rebel groups. A UN peacekeeping mission has not stamped out the violence, and in fact, hundreds of its soldiers have been sent home after reports of sexual abuse. Now, wherever Wagner has gone, accusations of widespread and unchecked human rights abuses have followed, including executions, rapes, and torture. Now, there was a good segment from NBC News that I want to share with you, because I've been hearing about the Wagner group for months now. And then we see this attempted coup. Okay, now this segment is, let's see, where is that? Okay, let me cue this clip up here. Wagner. Okay, this one right here. This is from NBC Nightly News. This is Richard Engel reporting for NBC Nightly News on the Wagner Group operating in Central African Republic. And let's go to this clip here. Just a second. Here we go. not sure. Okay, hold on. I'm not sure what's going on with the audio. Why the audio was poor. Just a second. What is? Hold on. Let's try this again. All right, just a minute. Where's that clip here? All right, let's try this again. I don't know why the audio was poor. It should not be. Let's try that clip again here. Just, hold on, let me cue that back up. All right, stand by. Let's grab that clip again. Where is that? That is clip. Let's go here. Okay, we're gonna play this again. I'm not sure what's going on with the audio. I'm not sure what's going on with the audio. Here's the clip. I have to, when I edit this, I have to go in and edit this. I don't know. I have to get out of here. Here's the clip. Watch that. It's in that article also. But we're way over time. I have to get out of here. Okay, if you like this type of information, be sure to support the African History Network. We definitely need your support. That helps us keep doing the research. That helps us keep broadcasting the Sunday night show. It takes a lot of resources to be able to do this show. I do not get paid to do radio. 9, 10 a.m. does not pay me to do radio. So I have to finance all this myself. $, the AHN show through Cash App at our, and we have the information on our YouTube channel. I mean, on our website. And paypal.me/the AHN show. Through PayPal. If you go to our website, TheAFricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have the information there. Also, about our online class, it just started up on Saturday. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So be sure to register for that 12-week online course. You don't have to be present in the class. I don't take attendance. You don't have to be in the class when we do the class live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. We have a PayPal, Cash App information here. This is our Cash App account, $, TheAHNShow, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. Okay. All right. Look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you next week. Peace. Also, this Wednesday, I'll be on Lavanya Perriman's show, 9:10 a.m. WFDF, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. I'll be on her show the whole time, and we'll talk about Juneteenth history, the Civil War, reparations, voter suppression, all of that history. Okay, so that'll be this Wednesday, June 28th, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll broadcast on our social media platforms also when I'm in the studio live. Okay.